George Floyd's brother recounted the pain of losing his big brother. He called on Congress to honor George and make the necessary changes to ensure his death was not in vain. We also heard from my friend, Angela Underwood Jacobs, the sister of Patrick Underwood, a member of the Federal Protective Service who was murdered in the line of duty during a protest in Oakland, California. Angela urged Congress to make a change so that no one ever has to wake up to the phone call that she received telling her that her brother was shot, dead, and murdered. Here's a commitment I make to the Floyd family, to the Underwoods, and to any family that had lost a loved one senselessly in this part of violence for the last few weeks. Your families deserve justice, and we will not stop until we get to a solution that gets America on a path to a more united and peaceful future. Like most major national issues, there aren't Republican or Democrat solutions, but only American solutions. Despite there being common ground, Speaker Pelosi once again politicized what could have been a moment to lead and show the country we are capable of putting our differences aside when the stakes are this high. But Democrat leadership has kept Republicans shut out of those discussions and in turn left millions of Americans' voices left out of this important conversation. House Republicans will be putting forward a reform legislation proposal. Part of that will be led through the Judiciary Committee with Jim Jordan and others. They will be meeting today with Tim Scott, Senator, and we will focus on three main areas: performance, transparency, and accountability. 80% of law enforcement agencies express a need for increased training. Let us work to achieve that while making our communities safer. Transparency. We need to have more data available to formulate a fully accurate picture of the problem so we know how to expand resources to address them. Create a robust law enforcement data collection program at the Department of Justice, including data regarding use of force by and against law enforcement. Accountability. Bad cops need to be held accountable, period. Work with the law enforcement community to create databases to prevent bad cops from being rehired in other jurisdictions who are not aware of their past. Our efforts build upon priorities Republicans have recently enacted, including criminal justice reform in the First Step Act, opportunity zones, and tax reform and school choice through extension of the D.C. Opportunity Scholarship Program. While Democrats talk about defunding the police, Republicans talk about solutions that will defend Americans. We will also stand by and support our police officers who put on their uniform every day to carry out their oath to protect and serve their communities. I firmly believe in America, no one should be judged by the color of their skin, and no one should be judged by the uniform they wear. I believe with every fiber in my body that America is the greatest country that have ever existed. Let's work together to build on these undeniable legacy. Abraham Lincoln said, "I do not know who my grandfather was. I am much more concerned to know what his grandson will be." And Mother Teresa said, "Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow has yet to come. We have only today. Let us begin." Let us use those words as inspiration to work in the present to make a difference for our children and their children. We cannot change the past, but we can work to secure a more promising future. You know, in the last couple weeks, many of you know me as a happy conservative. I firmly believe that this entire nation grieves for the loss of the Floyd family, for the Underwood family as well, and any senseless murder that had taken place. We watched the protests. They have a right to be heard. They have a right to speak peacefully. But we watched the looters. We watched what's happening in Seattle today. There should be consequences for those actions. That is not the America we know and love. That is not the best of who we can be. And that's not a more perfect union. This is a moment of time that you put partisanship aside. Many of you have been in my offices. You watch the things I put on the wall. There's purposes for what goes on my wall. From a portrait of Frederick Douglass sitting down At the end of the hall, when you look at his life, an amazing life it is. Born into slavery, taught to read, taught others, fought his way out, then actually became an advisor to Abraham Lincoln, helping the nation to grow into a place that we should become. I have a portrait of Abraham Lincoln sitting inside my office. It's painted in black and white. Why? Because the greatest challenge ever to our Constitution was the Civil War. If Lincoln was here, he'd tell you, believe in the exceptionalism of America. The reason why I think Lincoln would say that is simply the Gettysburg Address. 7 years ago, our forefathers brought forth a new nation on this continent, conceived in liberty and dedicated the proposition that all men are created equal. He went on to say, but if we fail, government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from earth. There's been no other nation conceived in liberty and dedicated to the freedom and equality of each other. Then when you walk into my conference room, there's a large portrait there of Washington crossing the Delaware. You've all seen the picture before. You all think you know the story. It all took place Christmas 1776. But to the person who painted that picture, Emmanuel, he wasn't an American citizen. He actually had lived in America and went back to Germany. He did not paint it to 1850 and 1851. He wasn't there. There was no camera, no iPhone to take it. But what he wanted to do was inspire Germany to have a revolution based upon the freedoms and the liberties of America. So he thought the best way to do it, to inspire the others, was to paint a picture of a story that he was told. He gets it historically incorrect. Washington did not cross in a rowboat. They say it was at Durham. He puts 13 people in a rowboat. Why would he pick 13? 13 colonies. But he only shows you 12 faces. He has Washington in a ceremonial uniform with his hand on the chest, standing up, crossing the Delaware in the middle of winter. You look at Washington and think that man has probably never lost a battle. But history tells us Washington had not won one yet. That was our first victory when we surprised the Hessians. But what I want you to do is look at who's in the boat. This young immigrant who had lived in America, you know who he put in the boat? The second person rowing is Scottish. The person directly across from him in a green jacket is African American. You come down the boat into the middle in the red is a woman, in the very back is a Native American. I do not know if they were in the boat that day, but to this young immigrant, having lived in America, that's who he believed would be there. To the second to last person, there's a hand across the face. That's the hand of the 13th person that no one sees. You see, to this young artist, he was saying, here we are, not even a nation yet, but an idea. And an idea with a concept that believed in freedom, that all were created equal. Here's a hand, would you get in and join us? That's as true today as it was in 1776. We're going to face rough waters, but we're all going to be in the boat together. They all were rowing in the same direction. We may have to face challenges that we have not beat before. This is the moment in time in which we live. This is the moment in time of which how we should govern in this capital. Not by a party, but by an idea of a more perfect union. That everybody is in the boat and everybody's equal. That if there's an injustice, we'll correct it. But we live in a belief of a rule of law. Those are some of the reasons why I have the portraits in my office, of which I do. I think it's this moment in time is a time that we can serve together and show a leadership that I believe this country craves. With that, let me take questions.
Are you expecting there to be a combined House and Senate Republican proposal given this meeting between Jordan and Scott? And are there aspects of the Pelosi police bill that are non-starters for you? What is objectionable in there specifically?
All right, you got two different questions there. Could there be a House and Senate Republican? There very well could be. We're working closely together with Senator Tim Scott. There's a lot of ideas that are very similar in that, especially working around the framework that we have from accountability to transparency to others. In the Democrat bill, conceptually, there are things that would be similar that we could address, that I think we can work together on. That's why I find it difficult that they did not reach out to. I reached out to many of them, and I think there's a place we can work together. I'm hopeful when we get to a markup, we could be in a place that it's not one bill or nothing, that it's the ideas of all, that it's everybody in the boat together having an opportunity to put that. And I'm hopeful that will come to fruition. Yes?
What are you opposed to in the Democrats' bill?
Look, I'm not saying from one aspect or another. What I'm saying is let's sit together, find about where we're able to agree. And I think there's a lot of concepts that we agree upon.
So you don't disagree at all with anything in the bill?
No, I'm not saying I don't disagree with anything at all. What I'd like to do at this moment in time is not have to answer a question of where we're going to fight where we disagree. What I'd like to do is work to where we agree upon. I think America deserves that. And I don't think any idea, I'm not going to sit it back and say, whatever you offer, it's wrong. What I'm going to say is, let's put all ideas up front and let's work together to produce law, not politics.
One more question on that.
Yes.
Do you support banning chokeholds?
Yes. Especially in the concept, if you watch within a bill coming forward, the idea of someone that would have a chokehold when somebody is handcuffed or others, there should be severe consequences. Yes.
Speaker Pelosi said that the Congressional Black Caucus has also reached out to the Republican Party on this. Are their voices being considered as the Republican Party creates their reform package, whatever it looks like? And if you'll allow me a second question, just wondering if you can react to General Milley's comments that he should not have been part of the photo op in front of St. John's Church.
Okay, so I take your first question was restated, I'm sorry.
Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah, I would like to work with Congressional Black Caucus. I have a very good relationship with Karen Bass. I have a high respect for Karen. We served together in the state legislature. We have worked on numerous issues from fosters, kids, and others. I have reached out to Karen. We have talked, and I look forward to continuing those discussions, just as we've talked to anybody who's willing to work with us. I've just recently saw this comment. I'm not sure. I didn't know how to take it. Was he commenting about in combat uniform, what he was wearing? It shouldn't have been that uniform. I wasn't quite sure.
He said it was that it was inappropriate for him to have been there because it created a perception of the military being involved in domestic
Look, I have a
politics.
great deal of respect for the general and for the service he's done. Just now hearing it, don't know what else to say in that aspect of it. Yes.
Last question.
Yes, sir. I'll take a couple.
A few years ago, you voted, along with Democrats, involved to remove Confederate symbols from veteran cemeteries. Do you believe it's time to remove Confederate statues of Confederate generals and other figures from the Capitol and to rename military bases that are named after Confederate figures?
So I would take your comments mainly in regards to Speaker Pelosi's letter. Is that what we're kind of referring to, statues and others?
Also a bipartisan amendment in the Senate Armed Services Committee to force the renaming of these places like Fort Bragg.
When it comes to statues, states have the power to select who to come forward. When I was in the state legislature, we voted to change one of California's statutes. Doesn't refer to anything Confederacy because California was not in that, but we added Ronald Reagan. The statues that Nancy Pelosi are talking about is kind of a struggle within her own party. They were voted upon the legislature and brought here under Democrat majorities from Mississippi to the other states that she speaks about. States, unfortunately, when you look at the law governing the replacement of statues, is 2 U.S. Code 2132. I would encourage those legislatures to be able to change from the path of what they brought forth. I know in North Carolina there's been a movement to change for quite some time and bring one as Billy Graham up. States have the power to do that. I know the Democratic Party and what they have voted to bring up in the past, I think they should work towards that. And these, fortunately, to be able to.
In all likelihood to vote on this. So how will you vote?
How will we have an opportunity to vote on this? It's governed by 2 U.S. Code 2132. You want to change the code?
Well, you are going to vote on the
Pelosi does not
NDAA,
have
are
the
you not?
jurisdiction
I'm
over it.
also asking about military bases. You probably noticed that President Trump said yesterday he doesn't want them renamed. As that was going on, the Senate Armed Services Committee voted on a bipartisan basis to do exactly the opposite. you are going to have an opportunity to vote on
Yeah,
this.
we're
And how
working
will
on
you
the
vote?
NDAA right now. We'll see what comes out of the NDA from that part. They'd have an opportunity to look at those bases. If there becomes, I know Esper said he would be open to it and look at as well. I know there are a number of people in the armed services that think it could be appropriate to change some, and some would say otherwise not to. So we'll look to see what comes out of the NDAA. I'll wait to see what comes out of the NDAA. Not opposed to it, though. Did you have a?
My question was also about the forts.
Oh, okay. Yes.
A new U.S. intel bulletin says that foreign adversaries are employing proxy outlets and social media to amplify criticism of the U.S. as corrupt and undemocratic in the wake of the George Floyd death.
I apologize, didn't catch the beginning of it.
A new U.S. intel
Yes.
bulletin is saying that foreign adversaries are using social media and other tools to sow division. Is there, in the wake of the George Floyd killing, do you have any reaction to that?
Yes, I have real concern about that. This is something that others have done times in the past to try to create more anger internally. I think, one, that we should take this very seriously, make sure we're able to stop this portion. Most important thing that we can do is work as one inside this Congress to not play into those items of what they're doing. I do have concern of some things that are being said on the Democratic side too, that they'll amplify and try to change, from the defunding of police. I see what's happening in the state of Washington, and their own member, Congressman Jayapal, called on the city's leaders to completely rethink policing to create a model for public safety that truly upholds the safety of all communities and redirects law enforcement spending and investing in essential services. We've got my own senator from California applauding the LA mayor's move to slash police funding by $150 million. You have AOC on Tuesday warned about Democrats and others trying to repackage the push to defund the police to make it more palatable to affluent swing voters among an ongoing debate of what the left-wing rallying cry actually means. So yes, outside sources are doing and inside sources are doing it as well, and I think that's very concerning, especially watching on television last night. I don't have any more intel on this, but overtaking a number of streets. An autonomous zone inside the state of Washington, taking over the city hall by a city council person, giving them the key. Where is the security in that? Where is the freedom in that? Those are the things I'm concerned about, of what happens when this type of stuff continues and members of the own Democratic Party of what they say the outcome. I know there's real concerns out there. I watched the Democrats are now going after children's television for Paw Patrol, wanting to eliminate that. I've watched where a professor in Alabama put out how to take down the Washington Monument. I saw a CNN contributor who's paid thinks that the Jefferson Memorial and the Washington Monument should be taken down. These are things that I just don't quite understand what they're doing and what they're playing into. It's not the better angels of America of what they speak of. Yes.
Thank you very much. I asked this question to Speaker Pelosi as well, but I want to know the timing of the next relief package. Have you changed your decision on it?
The timing of the next
relief package. And one thing related to that, millions of Americans want to go back to work, but they need to secure care for their children, and child care facilities are closed, and it might be safe to open them up. But the chamber sent a letter to Congress yesterday asking Congress to provide emergency funds to child care centers in the next relief package.
Well, child care is a real concern, and also education of our children, a great concern. Of watching states able to open up, of watching states that have greater population and others within Florida compared to in New York, of doing it properly, and ones who have done it poorly within New York, where we've had a considerable amount of deaths. A lot of this hinges on governors themselves, on their decision-making process. So as we continue to learn more about this, we should be able to move forward. I know in the Democrats' bill, they were very concerned about cannabis. It mentioned cannabis more than jobs in that $3 trillion. I know a lot of their legislation in that $3 trillion bill was legislation that they passed long before COVID ever came around. I'm not sure anybody's talked about it much more. I also know in that bill that they fought hard for, that they put in $1 trillion for states because they were concerned about police officers not being paid, and now they want to cut the police officers. This is in a small couple-week time plan, so I'm not sure what their philosophy or principles are, or if they have them. They also said people should not go outside, and then I watched thousands of people protest, and they're encouraging that, concerned about social distancing as well. I'm not sure what 2 weeks means now from today for America, what COVID looks like after the challenges we've had in some of these cities. If there are uptick statuses as well, that could harm childcare coming forward, that could harm schools opening back up. So these are all things we take in considerations in governor's word as well. But no, we still look at wanting to make sure whatever legislation we produce, we want to make sure we have data that it actually is helpful. I know liability protection is a great need. I was on a Zoom call this morning with a number of entrepreneurs, small businesses, and it was their number one need of whether they were going to stay open. They were praising the PPP that we were able to pass. I know it took a little longer. Some of them had to lay some people off because Speaker Pelosi held up that first bill. And then when we warned about the money coming out, when Speaker Pelosi held that money up again, yeah, it did cause real damage, and some people were laid off because of that. But PPP has been a big success. All of them, from all walks of life, were saying that. All of them took a big risk of the entrepreneurs able to stay open. And they were talking about liability protection. Could there be some more reform to the PPP? There could be some more resources. But yes, we need to get the country back open in a safe manner. And one of the core elements to do that is not only just childcare, but education and the jobs. Thank you all very much. I hope you have a nice weekend.
Oh, hey Kyle, it's Eric Watson from Newburgh. How are you? Hey, you